Well, you mentioned it being easier, sort of sitting here talking about it. I'd like you to put it into action now, please.
Right,
please,
come on, Rick.
I'd like you to go to the nets, if that's OK, and talk us through new ball batting. How do you face it?
Yeah, well, we've seen South Africa this morning that their mentality hasn't been quite right, their foot movement hasn't been quite right. We've then seen a partnership between Bavuma and Faf du Plessis, which has been spot on. It's been generally a positivity in foot movement. Ricky, you played at the WACA, 17 test matches. Leading into the game, did you do anything different, knowing that you were going to play on a wicket that was just going to bounce that little bit more?
I actually didn't, Michael. A lot of guys will tend on the faster, bouncier surfaces, and I think you might have done the same thing yourself. A lot of the guys tend to bat further back in their crease just to give themselves a little bit more time to get used to that extra pace and bounce. But I was exactly the same. I stayed in the same place the whole time. I didn't like to move around my crease too much because I then lost perception of my lengths and certainly where my off stump was at different times. But I think what you mentioned on the way across them was the South African openers in particular were just a little bit uncertain with their foot movements. They weren't really committing, if it was a full ball, to go forward and be well balanced and watch the ball and play it late. If it was a short ball, they didn't really get back in position in the line of the ball and play it late under their eyes. They sort of got stuck a little bit in between, which you can't afford to do when the ball is quick and bouncy like it was in that first session in Perth.
So you mentioned your position on the crease stayed the same. So if you went to India, for instance, facing the new ball, lower, slower wickets, you know that they're going to target the pads. Yep. Would you change your position on the crease playing in India?
Yeah, a little bit I would, but not right at the start of my innings. I'd like to get into my innings a little bit first, and then, particularly if it was in India and they had Zahir Khan or another left-armer bowling, I'd like to get out of my crease a lot more to the left-handers. I'd try and get out of my crease a little bit and actually get to the ball, especially if it was reverse swinging. I was one that liked to get to the ball as quickly as I could, not sort of sit back and wait for the ball to have swung or nipped in a little bit more.
So let's put you into the position of Hashim Amla.
Yep.
You're walking out there at the end of the first over. What's in your mindset in terms of, obviously, your movement at the WACA and also the scoring options? Where are you looking to score? Well,
the first thing I want to do is I want to be positive if I'm defending or if I'm attacking. I don't want to get stuck anywhere in between, because if you're not quite, as I said, not quite switched on and it's a half-hearted shot, before you know it, you're nicking it somewhere behind the wicket in Perth. So as we saw with Amla, I mean, he did get a good ball. It did seem away a little bit. And the ball, a couple of balls before, as we know with Amla, he goes a long way back in his crease, tries to cover his off stump. And when he tried to play forward to that one of Hazelwood, he's just a little bit late on it. But if you look back, if he was being critical of himself, I think, looking at his dismissal, he would have looked at that and thought, geez, maybe in Perth I didn't have to play that ball. It's outside the line of off stump by a fair margin, more than likely going to bounce over the stumps. So that's probably the slight error that he made.
And what about the WACA rounds, historical, the bounce, the opposition arrives there. We've talked about the nets before the game, about the extra bounce, and it's not always that bouncy in the middle. Yeah. As an Australian team, when you particularly England side, we go and take your guard, I'll be out there in the middle going, yes, centre please. And you look around and all of a sudden you see 4 catches, Matthew Hayden at gully, you've got Justin Langer in here, and all of a sudden you see massive spaces in front of you. And I always felt with the England side that those that had a strong mentality, they could see those 4 grabbers and gullies and the short legs as, fielders there to watch you play. And they saw lots of gaps in front of them. There was only a small few who could do that. Yeah. Most of the England players would see those 4 in the gully and Justin Langer as fear. They realised that they were there to basically take the ball, catch the ball. Yep. Could you identify that with the opposing team, particularly at the WACA, that there was a little bit of negativity, there was a fragility about technique and mentality?
Certainly with certain England teams that we played against, maybe yes.
No, you can say it, don't worry.
We were talking about it early on. But I think that's one thing that you can't forget about at the WACA is, and as we've seen in this first session's play today, a lot of the play has come from front foot shots, because the Australians are always going to pitch the ball up early, but I think opposition teams come there, they think that the ball's going to be bouncing up around their ear rolls and they're looking to hit a square cut or force the ball off the back foot or get a few pull shots away. But in fact, if you're patient enough to think about scoring off the front foot only when the bowler's over pitch, that's when you get the true value for your shots at the WACA.
So even though that the ball's going to bounce steeper, all your focus is to think down the ground.
It certainly was for me, yeah. And I'm sure a lot of players would approach it in a different manner, but I was still looking to score down the ground. I mean, the thing about in Perth is that you do get great value for your strokes down the ground. I mean, we've seen today that it's exceptionally quick outfield all around the ground, but generally in Perth, if you can get a good stride forward, hit the ball in the middle of the bat, you get the boundaries down the ground.
Yeah, and South Africa have had a difficult morning. Australia on the money with the ball, a little bit fragile with mentality and technique in the first out. Then Faf du Plessis showed exactly what can happen at the WACA. If you're positive, still in movement, get a good strong base,
Absolutely, but more importantly, there, look how late he plays that ball. He's played that ball back in almost behind his body, and what he did as well, when there was anything that wasn't, a proper length ball, he was rocked onto the back foot and hit a couple of beautiful pull shots. But I just liked how positive he has been. Once again, over pitch there, wide, in his zone, fully committed to a cover drive, bang, 4. Another one there, solid push down to mid-on. Wait, once again, a little bit short outside off stump, but positive with it. He's not holding the bat there hoping that something's going to happen. He's actually in a position where he can hit a good shot and try and force it through the field.
Generally, in a ground like the Wacker, you'd say, yeah, be positive, but you'd just try and get into lunch on day one, wouldn't you? You'd know that by 2 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon, the Kookaburra ball, 40, 45 overs, then it's time to capitalise. Is that the kind of mindset that you'd take to the middle?
I never took the mindset of trying to survive. I was always trying to score runs, do whatever I could to score runs. And then I felt then that I could put the pressure back on the bowler. I could actually, if I was driving well early on, I could force the bowler into bowling a little bit shorter to me, which was probably my natural strength anyway. And I think on the back of that's what Faf has done particularly well so far. His defence has been really solid. He's got his team, more importantly, through to the lunch break as well. Only 4 down. He's set. He's got to go on now and make a big score for the rest of this afternoon.
Absolutely. Faf du Plessis is set. Another batsman who faced the new ball. It was a second new ball on one occasion. Graeme Swann. How did you play the new ball?
Well, it was a bit different for me when I played the new ball. Ricky Ponting and Michael Vaughan, both world-class players, and they saw gaps that they could score runs. I was the one who looked round, saw 6 slips and a fly slip, and I knew basically I was going to get bombed. I did face a second new ball, Ryan Harris and Mitchell Johnson. I actually didn't mind it because of those gaps. I threw my hands at everything. Probably my highest score in the Ashes, 24 not out, robbed of 100.
Yeah, seriously, so the top order, we've seen South Africa. They've come out to bat this morning and there has been a fragility about them. What is it like being a tail ender on a wicket like the Wacker?
I tell you what, I actually preferred it. It sounds strange, but it's quicker and bouncier, and so as soon as it's short, you can just get out of the way of it. Adelaide, I hated because it's slower, you can't predict the bounce as much. Awful. I'd just get hit on the shoulder, hit in front of the face. Perth actually quite enjoyed. I didn't bat for long there, but
one of the few tail enders that enjoyed batting right at the Wacker.
But yeah, as you don't see many big scores, numbers 8 to 11 at Perth because of the bounce mainly. If you see low, slow wickets, tail-enders can get the odd 50, the odd 30. When it's quick and bouncy and carrying through the slips, you're not going to see many big scores from the tail.
Yeah, well, as you said, quick and bouncy. Let's have a look at some of the leading wicket takers at the Wacker. And, well, all the big names. One of the big names you can imagine, obviously, Glenn McGrath there at the top of that list. 52 wickets at the Wacker. It's pace-dominated. Mitchell Johnson, Brett Lee, Merv Hughes, Craig McDermott. And then you've got Shane Warne at number 6. It must have been amazing, Ricky, to sit back and watch some of this happen.
Yeah, well, I've watched some of it on television over the years, and I've been a part of some of those numbers and wickets taken there as well. And as you say, it is pace bowler dominated, as you'd expect at the Wacker. But it's actually not as strange, but quite a different array of fast bowlers there as well. I mean, McGrath's the leading wicket taker there, played 12 matches. But you look at the other guys, Johnson, Lee, Gillespie, McDermott, Rodney Hogg, Dennis Lilly, they're all express fast bowlers. So it just goes to show, I guess, and we've seen even today with someone like a Hazelwood, and I think as the game goes on, Philander will play a big role as well, I think, for the South Africans on this pitch, pitching the ball up, just getting a little bit of sideways movement. He'll be dangerous as well. And these strike rates, of course, as well. Curtly Ambrose right up there, Mitchell Johnson as well. Curtly Ambrose 26.6, Mitchell Johnson 37 as well. So this happens pretty frequently as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you look at the number of those fast bowlers, they're quite tall as well, over 6 foot. Hazelwood this morning, over 6 foot, hitting the pitch hard, but it's the length. If a bowler's bowling 85 miles an hour and bowling short of the Wacker, yeah, he might intimidate a batsman or two, he might hit a batsman or two, but it really is the old adage and basic, just hit the top of off stump as many times as you can, and that top of off stump in length might just be a little bit fuller than a normal top of off stump length. So it's those that can adapt the quickest, but more so use the new ball. You really do have to make the new ball count in Australia, particularly at the Wacker.